The Council's commanders watched in horror as the massive human warship hovered just outside the range of their fleet. It had been days since the first attack, and despite all their efforts, they were no closer to understanding the true power of the humans. The warship had barely moved, barely fired. It seemed almost patient. It wasn't attacking indiscriminately. It was waiting. But for what? Zalren, one of the few remaining leaders of the Council, stared out at the warship from the command center. The tension in the room was unbearable. His thoughts were a blur. How had humanity come to possess such unimaginable power? He remembered a time when humans were considered weak, scattered across the galaxy, barely holding on to survival. And now, this warship, this force of nature, was threatening everything the Council had built. "Commander, the warship is sending another transmission," Virith, his second-in-command, said, breaking the silence. Zalren turned to face him, his expression hardening. The warship's messages had been cryptic, often full of threats, but something about this one felt different. Something told him that this would be the one to finally explain why humanity had come here, why they had built such a formidable weapon. "Put it through," Zalren ordered, his voice calm but tense. The screen flickered to life, and a voice, smooth and emotionless, echoed through the room. It was human, but there was an unsettling edge to it. It wasn't an ordinary human transmission. It was deliberate, like the voice of someone who knew they held all the power. "This is not an invasion," the voice began, sending chills down Zalren's spine. "This is a reclamation. You failed to listen. You failed to understand. Humanity was not defeated. We were forced into the shadows. And now we are coming back to claim what was always ours." Zalren's heart raced. Reclamation. What did they mean by that? How could humanity have ever had power over the galaxy? The idea was absurd. The Council had ruled for thousands of years, its fleets unmatched, its technology far beyond that of any species in the galaxy. But this warship, it was proof that the balance of power had shifted in ways no one had ever imagined. The transmission continued, the voice growing colder, more certain. "You never knew who we truly were. The galaxy's history has been written by those in power, but it is time for the truth to be revealed. Humanity did not just survive. We were the architects of this galaxy's first order. We built the foundations of this universe, only to have them stolen from us. Now we are back to take them back." The words hit Zalren like a punch to the gut. He had always been taught that the Council was the first and greatest civilization to rise in the galaxy. There were stories, old, forgotten stories, about ancient empires, but those were myths. There was no evidence to support them. The Council's rise had been one of survival and unity, not conquest, or so he had thought. "We are not here to destroy. We are here to restore balance. The power you hold now, it was never yours to begin with. It is time for you to step aside." The transmission ended with a sharp click. For a long moment, no one in the command center spoke. The room was still, the weight of the message hanging heavy in the air. The warship wasn't just a weapon. It was a message. Humanity wasn't here to conquer for the sake of power alone. They were here to reclaim what they believed was theirs. What had the Council taken from them? Zalren felt a knot form in his stomach. He had always believed the Council's history was the true history. They had shaped the galaxy. They had built the systems that held everything together. But now, he wasn't so sure. Could humanity have been something more than just a scattered species of survivors? Could they have been the original architects of the galaxy's order? "Commander," Virith's voice broke Zalren's thoughts. He turned to see his second-in-command looking at him with wide, fearful eyes. "This isn't just about military strength," Virith said, his voice trembling. "This warship, it's more than just a weapon. The technology it has, it's beyond anything we've ever seen. It's almost as if they knew what we would do before we did it." Zalren's mind raced. The warship's abilities had always seemed impossible. It could disable their most advanced weapons with a single strike. It could move with an eerie calmness, as if it knew it could wipe out anything in its path without breaking a sweat. What if humanity had been hiding this power all along? There must be something more, Zalren muttered under his breath. A secret we've missed. They're not just here to destroy us. They're here to take something. Virith nodded slowly, understanding what his commander meant. Humanity wasn't just fighting for control. They were fighting for something ancient, something that had been taken from them long ago. What was it? The power to shape the galaxy. The secret to eternal life. The truth about the Council's origins. Zalren's mind spun, but the answers remained elusive. All he knew was that the warship's power was not just in its weapons, it was in its message. Humanity had not come out of nowhere. They had been here before. They had shaped the galaxy before. And now, they were back to claim it once more. This changes everything, Zalren whispered. The galaxy has always been ruled by the Council, but now, we're just pawns. We've been living in the shadow of something much greater. We've been living in the shadow of humanity. The thought terrified him. The warship was only the beginning. If humanity had the power to reclaim what they once had, then the galaxy was about to enter an era unlike anything it had ever known. The Council's reign was ending, but what would come next? Zalren looked at the view screen, where the warship still hovered, silent and waiting. He had no answers, but one thing was clear. Humanity's true power had just been revealed, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The tension in the Council's command room was palpable as the transmission from the human warship ended. Zalren stood frozen, his mind racing with the implications of the message. For a moment, the room was dead silent. No one knew what to say. No one knew how to react. The words from the human voice still echoed in Zalren's ears. We are here to reclaim. Reclaim what? How could they have ever had control of the galaxy? Zalren had spent his entire life believing that the Council's reign was not only just but inevitable, it was the natural order of things. But now, humanity's warship had appeared, bringing with it the cold certainty that everything he knew was about to be shattered. Virith, his second in command, was the first to speak. Commander, we've been monitoring the warship's movements. It's not just sitting idle. It's waiting, watching us. But why? Why are they not attacking in full force? Zalren's eyes narrowed as he stared at the warship's imposing silhouette on the screen. He had no answers, only more questions. But something gnawed at him. Humanity's behavior wasn't typical of an invading force. There was no arrogance in their transmission, no demands for surrender. It was almost as if they were simply waiting for the Council to acknowledge what they believed to be their rightful return. The silence was broken by another alarm, signaling that the warship had moved closer. Zalren felt a surge of panic. This was no longer just a matter of strategy. This was a psychological battle. Humanity wasn't attacking with force, but with an idea that they had a right to this galaxy, a galaxy that the Council had ruled with absolute control for millennia. How could they possibly respond to such an assault on their very legitimacy? We need to act, Commander, Virith said, his voice full of unease. If we wait any longer, they might feel emboldened enough to strike without warning. Zalren nodded, his thoughts racing. The warship had already proven that it could neutralize their weapons with ease. No conventional strategy would work. What they were facing wasn't just a military threat. It was an existential one. The very foundation of the Council's power was under attack, and there was no way to predict what humanity's next move would be. Zalren's gaze drifted to the warship again. It seemed so patient, as if it knew the Council would eventually fall apart under the pressure. Humanity wasn't here to merely invade. They were here to unseat the Council, to replace it. The idea of it was both terrifying and incomprehensible. How had humanity, a species once thought to be insignificant, gained the power to challenge the might of the Council? It seemed impossible, but the evidence was right in front of him. This warship, this force, was real. His mind raced back to ancient histories, to the old legends that had been passed down through the generations. He'd heard stories of human empires that predated the Council's rise to power. Old, forgotten empires that were thought to be mere myths. Had the humans truly been the ones to build this galaxy, to shape it in their image? Had the Council taken their rightful place? The questions spun in Zalrin's mind, but none of them could offer a clear answer. He could feel the walls closing in. Whatever humanity's plans were, they were beyond anything the Council could understand. "Commander," Virith's voice brought him back to the present. "Our ships are ready. We could launch a direct assault on the warship, but we don't know if it will make a difference. This is no ordinary ship. This is something far more advanced than anything we've ever encountered." Zalrin knew Virith was right. Sending their remaining fleet to engage the warship would be an act of desperation. Even if they somehow managed to inflict damage, they would only provoke the humans into a far more dangerous response. The last thing they needed was to drive humanity into a corner, forcing them to unleash their full power. He turned to face Virith, his voice low and filled with regret. "It's not a battle we're fighting, Virith. This is a war of ideas. Humanity has something we don't understand, something more powerful than any fleet or weapon." As he spoke, Zalrin's mind kept returning to the message from the warship. "We are here to reclaim." It wasn't just a declaration of war. It was a statement of right. The warship wasn't just here to conquer. It was here to take what humanity believed had been stolen from them. And whatever that was, the Council had no idea how to stop it. Minutes later, the warship's massive form filled the view screen again. The ship, still silent, moved slowly towards the heart of the Council's fleet. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't intimidated. They were in no rush to destroy the Council. They were simply waiting for the right moment to make their next move. The Council, on the other hand, was in a panic, scrambling to understand the scope of the threat before it was too late. But it was already too late. The truth had been revealed, and Zalrin knew the galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity wasn't just a threat. They were a force with a history, a right to rule, and a plan that the Council could not possibly anticipate. All their tactics, all their strategies, could never overcome the truth humanity had just revealed. This galaxy was never theirs to rule. The Council had stolen it, and now humanity was coming to take it back. As Zalrin stood in the command room, his mind spinning with the enormity of the situation, he understood one thing: the galaxy was on the verge of a new era. The question was, what would it look like when humanity's power finally took full shape? The warship hovered silently, its massive form dwarfing everything around it. Zalrin could feel the tension building in the command center. His people had fought wars, conquered countless civilizations, and seen the rise and fall of empires. But this was different. Humanity, a species once thought to be nothing more than scattered survivors on the fringe of the galaxy, had somehow ascended to a level of power that was incomprehensible to the Council. Zalrin's mind raced. The message from the warship still echoed in his ears, the words haunting him. "We are here to reclaim." Reclaim what? What did humanity have a right to that the Council had taken from them? The galaxy had been under the control of the Council for thousands of years. The idea that humanity had once ruled, that they had ever been anything more than a fledgling species, was a concept that Zalrin couldn't fathom. And yet there was undeniable truth in the message. Humanity had returned, and with them, they'd brought an unmatched power. "Commander, we've detected another shift in the warship's energy readings," Virith said, breaking the heavy silence. His voice was filled with anxiety. It's preparing something. We don't know what yet, but it's building." Zalrin's eyes narrowed. What kind of weapon? What are they planning now? Virith glanced at the readings, his face pale. "We're not sure, but whatever it is, it's unlike anything we've ever encountered. This warship, it doesn't act like a typical vessel. It doesn't fight like anything we know." Zalrin clenched his fists. This wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about understanding what humanity had become, and what they intended to do with their newfound power. The warship wasn't just a weapon of destruction. It was a a symbol of humanity's rise, a statement that they were no longer the weak species that had once struggled to survive in the galaxy. They were now the ones in control. "Prepare the fleet for engagement," Zalrin commanded, though doubt gnawed at him. He knew their ships, their technology, could not match the raw might of the human warship. But they had no choice. The Council had been the dominant power for millennia. It was unimaginable that they could lose to a race so young, so untested. But humanity had already shown them how wrong they were. As Zalrin walked through the command room, he could feel the eyes of his fellow commanders on him. They all shared the same fear. Fear that the Council was no longer the dominant force in the galaxy. The truth had become clear. Humanity had returned not to negotiate, not to bargain, but to reclaim what they believed was theirs. Minutes later, the order was given. The fleet moved out, weapons charged and ready. Zalrin watched the holomap, his heart pounding in his chest. The human warship had not moved since it had first appeared. It had simply hovered there, waiting. But now, as their fleet approached, the warship made a move. A massive surge of energy rippled through its hull, and suddenly, without warning, the warship fired. The blast was unlike anything the Council had ever seen. It wasn't a simple energy beam or missile. The weapon seemed to bend space itself. The beam lanced through the heart of the Council's fleet, splitting ships apart like fragile paper. Shields, once considered impenetrable, flickered and died in an instant. In a matter of moments, half of the Council's fleet had been annihilated, reduced to nothing but debris floating in the void. Zalrin's stomach sank. He had thought they were prepared, but this was different. This wasn't just a warship. It was a weapon of unimaginable power. The Council had no defense, no strategy to counter this kind of assault. "Commander," Vireth said in a trembling voice, "we've lost half of our fleet already. What do we do now? We can't keep up with this kind of firepower." They're unstoppable." Zalrin's mind spun. He looked out at the view screen, where the human warship loomed large. It had barely moved. It had fired, wiped out half of their forces, and then waited, silent, almost as if it were testing them. The humans weren't fighting to win a battle. They were making a statement, proving something to the Council. Zalrin realized then that this wasn't just a war for control. It was a reclamation, as the humans had said. They weren't here to conquer. They were here to reshape the galaxy. Humanity was no longer interested in playing by the rules the Council had established. They wanted to tear down the old order and build something new. A new galaxy, one where humanity reigned supreme. "Commander, we need to retreat," Vireth urged, panic creeping into his voice. "We can't fight this. We need to regroup." Zalrin didn't respond immediately. He knew the Council could not afford to lose their last remaining ships, but he also knew that retreating now would only show weakness. Humanity had already proven that they could destroy the Council's forces without breaking a sweat. Retreating would make it clear that the Council's reign was over. And yet, Zalrin understood that there was no winning this fight. The human warship had proven that the Council's technology, no matter how advanced, was no match for the power humanity had unleashed. The very idea of the Council, as the undisputed rulers of the galaxy, was falling apart. The truth was undeniable now. Humanity had once ruled the galaxy, and now they were coming back to take what was rightfully theirs. Zalrin's thoughts were interrupted by another blast from the warship. This time, it was aimed directly at the heart of the Council's remaining fleet. The impact was devastating. The ships exploded into fireballs, their debris scattering across the stars. In an instant, the Council's last hope was gone. Zalrin stood there, numb. The power of humanity had been revealed. There was no stopping it now. The question that lingered in his mind, and the minds of everyone in the room, was this: what would the galaxy look like once humanity's rule had been fully restored? The Council's era had ended. Now, the real battle was just beginning. The devastation was beyond anything Zalrin had ever imagined. The Council's once proud fleet, now reduced to burning wreckage floating in space, was proof of the overwhelming power humanity had unleashed. The warship had barely moved. It wasn't fighting to conquer. It wasn't fighting for control. Humanity wasn't here to negotiate. They had already made their intentions clear. They weren't interested in taking part in the old power structure. They were here to reshape it, to reclaim a galaxy that they believed had been taken from them. Zalrin's mind raced as he tried to grasp the full weight of what had just happened. The messages, the mysterious words from the human warship, suddenly felt all too real. "We are here to reclaim," they had said. The warship's destructive power was simply the first act of a larger plan, one that was taking shape before his eyes. It wasn't just about military dominance. It was about wiping the slate clean. Humanity didn't just want a piece of the galaxy. They wanted everything. "We've lost," Zalren whispered under his breath, the reality of the situation hitting him harder with every passing second. The few remaining ships in the fleet were retreating. There was no point in fighting anymore. Humanity's warship had proven that no force in the galaxy, no matter how powerful, could stand against it. But as Zalren watched the remnants of the Council's fleet scatter, he knew that this wasn't the end. This was merely the beginning of something far more dangerous. Humanity's warship hadn't finished yet. It was merely waiting for something. It was clear now that the Council wasn't the enemy. It was a system, a whole way of thinking that humanity intended to crush. "Commander, we've received a new transmission," Virith said, his voice shaking. "It's from the human warship." Zalrin's eyes narrowed. He had no intention of hearing another one of those cold, calculated threats, but the silence in the command center told him that there was something important in the message, something that could give them a glimpse into humanity's true intentions. "Put it through," Zalrin ordered, his voice heavy with reluctance. The screen flickered and then steadied. The same emotionless voice echoed across the room. "This is your final warning. The Council's time is over. The galaxy will no longer be ruled by a few powerful entities who control the fate of countless species. The time has come for humanity to rebuild what was once theirs, and we will stop at nothing to ensure that the past is erased." Zalrin felt his blood run cold. This wasn't just an idle threat. It wasn't just a warship speaking. This was a declaration of purpose, a purpose that extended far beyond military conquest. The words "rebuild" and "erase" were the key. Humanity had returned to remake the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as restorers of a lost order. They weren't interested in diplomacy. They weren't interested in terms of peace or coexistence. Humanity's message was simple. The galaxy would be theirs once again, and those who stood in their way would be erased from history. Zalrin's heart pounded in his chest. How had they let this happen? For centuries, the Council had built alliances, crushed rebellions, and maintained a careful balance of power. They had assumed that they were untouchable, that the galaxy was under their rule forever. But now, humanity had shattered that illusion in a single blow. The very foundation of the Council's power had been questioned, not by weapons, but by the force of humanity's belief. We have to fight back, Commander," Virith said, desperation creeping into his voice. "We can't just let them rewrite everything. The galaxy won't survive under their rule." Zalrin didn't respond immediately. There was nothing to say. Their fleet had been obliterated. The Council had no more ships, no more military strength to rely on. Humanity's power was absolute. The question now wasn't about victory or defeat. It was about survival. How would the Council survive in a galaxy that was no longer governed by them? How could they possibly counter a force that was driven not by desire for power, but by a conviction that their rule was inevitable? The truth was painful. The Council had always been in control, but that control had been built on lies. Humanity had once been the architects of the galaxy, and now they were returning to take it back. All the alliances, all the systems, the entire structure the Council had so carefully built was meaningless in the face of humanity's return. They didn't need to fight for power because they believed they were meant to hold it. They had simply waited, patiently, methodically, for the moment when they could take back what they had lost. "Commander," Virith said again, his voice trembling, "there's nothing left. Our ships are gone. The Council. It's over." Zalrin took a deep breath, his chest heavy. The old ways had ended. The galaxy was changing, and nothing could stop it now. The human warship hovered in the distance, a symbol of a new era, a new order. Humanity was no longer a fledgling species fighting for survival. It was the force of the galaxy, and they had come back to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. Zalrin turned toward the viewscreen one last time. The warship was no longer an enemy. It was a reminder. A reminder that the galaxy had never belonged to the Council in the first place. Humanity had built it, shaped it, and now they had returned to make sure their history was written again. "Let them come," Zalrin muttered, his voice filled with a mixture of resignation and defiance. "We can't stop them, but we can bear witness." For the Council, for all their power and pride, it was over. But for humanity, it was only the beginning. The galaxy would soon be theirs once again, and nothing would stand in their way. The warship's presence was like a shadow that hung over the galaxy, casting a cold and undeniable reality. The Council, once the proud rulers of the galaxy, had seen their fleets shattered, their authority questioned, and their foundation crumble in a matter of days. Zalrin stood in the command center, staring at the viewscreen where the human warship loomed large, silent, and waiting. The message had been clear. Humanity had returned, not to conquer, but to reclaim. And there was nothing the Council could do to stop them. "Commander," Virith's voice broke the silence, though it lacked the urgency it once held. The panic from earlier had been replaced by something far more difficult to ignore: acceptance. "We've received another message. It's from the warship." Zalrin's gaze didn't leave the screen. There was no longer any fear in his heart, only a deep, unsettling sense of inevitability. He had once believed that the Council's rule was unshakable. Now the reality had become clear. Their time was over. Humanity's return had not been a mere strike at their power. It had been the unmasking of a truth they had long denied. "Put it through," Zalrin said quietly, not because he wanted to hear it, but because he had no choice. The transmission from the human warship was their way of communicating their intentions, and as much as Zalrin wanted to ignore it, he knew he had to face it head-on. The screen flickered to life once again, and the same cold voice echoed through the command center. "This is your final chance. Surrender. Surrender." The word hit Zalrin like a slap in the face. For centuries, the Council had ruled with an iron fist, suppressing uprisings and punishing any species that dared defy them. The very idea of surrender had been unthinkable. They had always believed that they were the natural order of the galaxy, that their power was infallible. But now, humanity was forcing them to face a reality they had long ignored. The galaxy wasn't theirs to rule. Humanity had been here long before them, and they were coming back to reclaim what had been taken. This wasn't just about military might. It wasn't about the destruction of ships or the defeat of armies. This was about the loss of belief in the Council's supremacy. Humanity had erased that belief, and now there was no going back. Zalrin's fingers tightened into fists, but his voice remained calm, almost detached. "What are you asking for?" He finally spoke. The voice from the warship was unyielding. "We are not asking. We are telling. The Council has outlived its time. Your people were never meant to control this galaxy. It is humanity's destiny to take back what is ours. Your ships are gone. Your power is broken. Surrender the galaxy." The words stung. It wasn't just an invasion. It wasn't just a battle. The warship, and humanity itself, were declaring that the Council's rule had been a mistake, a distortion. Humanity was not just the rightful heirs to the galaxy. They were the ones who had shaped it, built it, and now they were coming back to restore it to its true form. Zalrin could feel the weight of those words, settling on him like an inescapable truth. He had been raised to believe in the Council's purpose, to believe in the idea that the galaxy was better under their control. But now he understood. The Council was a relic, an outdated system of power that had been built on lies and conquest. It was never meant to last forever, and the universe had a way of righting its wrongs. This can't be the end," Virith whispered, though his voice had lost much of its earlier defiance. There was a sense of helplessness in it now, a realization that humanity's worship was no longer just a force to be feared. It was a sign that the galaxy was changing. Zalrin didn't answer. He didn't need to. The truth had been revealed. Humanity had returned, not to take part in the old order, but to create a new one. And the Council's time was over. The warship loomed on the viewscreen again, but this time it didn't fire. It didn't make any aggressive moves. It simply waited, as if the human commander on board was giving the Council one last chance to understand. One last chance to accept the reality that the galaxy wasn't theirs to rule any longer. The silence that followed the final transmission was deafening. In the command center, Zalrin and his remaining officers stood in a heavy stillness, the hum of the control systems the only sound breaking the silence. The viewscreen remained fixed on the human warship, which still hovered in place, seemingly content to allow time to pass as they waited for the Council's response. Zalrin's hands rested on the table in front of him, his mind numb as he processed the weight of the decision he had just made. Surrender. It was a word that no Council leader had ever uttered, not in all the centuries of their rule. Yet here he stood, having just sent that very word to the enemy. The galaxy that had once bowed to them would now bow to humanity, and he could do nothing to stop it. His people were defeated. Their ships had been destroyed, their fleets scattered, their power obliterated by a single overwhelming force. Humanity had proven their supremacy, and the Council, despite all its wealth, technology, and power, had nothing left to fight with. Virith was the first to break the silence, his voice weak but steady, betraying a deep confusion. "Commander, do you think they'll accept our surrender?" Zalrin exhaled sharply, looking up at the warship on the viewscreen. He wasn't sure what humanity would do next. The warship's weapons had torn apart their fleet with ease. It was as though they had simply erased the Council's presence in the galaxy. But humanity's purpose had never been to annihilate or dominate, at least not in the traditional sense. They wanted something more. They wanted to reshape the galaxy, to reclaim what they had lost, and to remake it in their own image. "I don't know," Zalrin answered quietly, "but we no longer have a choice." The truth of the matter was undeniable. The Council was done. There was no way to reverse the devastation. Even if humanity accepted their surrender, what remained of the Council was too fractured to offer anything meaningful in return. They could try to fight back, but that would only lead to more destruction. Humanity had already shown that they were not interested in fighting a conventional war. They had taken the galaxy back with a single decisive move. The human warship, however, had not fired again. It simply waited, poised and watchful, as if it were observing the Council's next move, waiting for them to finally accept their fate. Zalrin didn't know whether that was a sign of mercy or simply part of a greater strategy. Either way, it didn't matter. The galaxy would be theirs again, and the Council had no role in it anymore. "Commander, we've received a message from the warship," Virith said, his voice urgent now. "They want us to meet with them, face to face." Zalrin's heart skipped a beat. A face-to-face meeting. What could humanity possibly want with him now? A part of him felt sick at the thought. Was this the beginning of their true conquest? The total dismantling of the Council, not just in power, but in spirit? Were they going to make an example of him too? The human warship's message had come across cold and clear. Surrender the galaxy. Meet us. But the command to meet face to face suggested something different, something unexpected. Zalrin turned to face his remaining officers, who were all silent, waiting for his command. There was no one left to consult, no allies left to rally. They had lost everything, And now, they faced humanity on their own terms. Zalrin could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was not just about the fate of the Council. It was about the fate of the entire galaxy. Humanity's intentions were clear, but what exactly did they expect from the Council's remnants? Could they truly accept a new order, one where they were no longer the rulers? "We must go," Zalrin said finally, his voice unwavering. "We have nothing left to lose. The Warship has been merciful so far. Let's see what they truly want from us. If they intend to rebuild the galaxy, we may still have a role to play in that future. But we must speak to them, face to face." Vareth hesitated for a moment before nodding, a small sense of resigned agreement in his eyes. The rest of the officers silently agreed, their expressions a mix of fear and curiosity. What awaited them on the other side of this meeting? A new future, or the final erasure of everything they had known? The decision was made. The Council would face humanity. And with that, Zalrin turned towards the door, preparing to step into the unknown. As the fleet made its slow journey toward the human warship, Zalrin couldn't help but reflect on the last few days. The journey from confident rulers of the galaxy to broken, humbled survivors had been swift and brutal. It was as though they had awakened from a long dream, only to realize the world around them had changed completely. Humanity, a species once thought to be insignificant, had risen like a phoenix from the ashes. They had shown the galaxy their true strength, and in doing so, they had shattered the old way of thinking. They had wiped away the lies that had kept the galaxy in check, revealing a truth that could no longer be ignored. The galaxy was theirs, and now it would be reshaped according to their will. Zalrin's thoughts were interrupted as the warship came into view, its immense silhouette dominating the sky like a living, breathing beast. The closer they got, the more Zalrin felt the weight of their presence. The warship wasn't just a military vessel. It was a symbol of humanity's return to power. Its power was not just in its size or weapons, but in its purpose. It was a message to the galaxy. As they drew closer, Zalrin could feel the collective fear of his crew, the unease that gripped them all. What were they about to face? Would humanity grant them the mercy of survival? Or would they be wiped from the face of the galaxy, like so many other failed empires before them? The time for answers had come. The galaxy was changing. Humanity had already shown that it would no longer be ruled by old powers. It would rule itself. Now, Zalrin and his people were left with the question: what would humanity's galaxy look like, and where would the Council fit into that future? "Do you really think we can just walk away?" Vareth asked, his voice a mix of disbelief and fear. "They're not just offering a new government, Commander. They're offering a new galaxy." Zalrin nodded slowly. Humanity wasn't asking them to surrender power. They were telling them to step aside. The warship was the embodiment of humanity's belief in their right to rule. The galaxy, the way the Council had known it, was coming to an end. The truth of it was clear now. There was no point in continuing to fight. The remaining fleet, what was left of it, had no chance against humanity's power. If they chose to fight, they would simply be wiped out, their ships reduced to ashes in an instant. If they chose to resist, they would only make humanity's conquest more complete. Zalrin took a deep breath and turned toward Vareth. "Prepare to make the final transmission," he said, his voice quiet but firm. Vareth looked at him, confusion and fear evident on his face. "What are you?" Zalrin cut him off. "We surrender, Vareth. The galaxy is no longer ours to control. We cannot stand against the force humanity has brought. But perhaps we can help guide them to a better future, one where the past isn't erased but rebuilt." The Council had always believed that their power was invincible. They had ruled over countless species, suppressed rebellions, and controlled the fate of the galaxy. But now, standing on the precipice of their defeat, Zalrin realized that true power wasn't about ruling over others. It was about understanding when to step aside, when to accept that the time for one era had passed, and the time for a new one had come. As he gave the order for the final transmission, a strange sense of peace washed over him. Humanity had returned to the galaxy with a mission, and whether they would succeed or fail, the galaxy would be forever changed. It was no longer a galaxy of empires, of distant rulers, and distant wars. It was the beginning of something new, something the Council could never have imagined, something that humanity had always known. The future of the galaxy was in their hands now. The transmission was sent, and the warship remained, silently awaiting the Council's decision. For Xalran, there was no turning back now. The galaxy would soon be reshaped, and humanity would lead the way.